Hey, this is Dr. Childs, and in this video I'm going to teach you a few things that you need to know about scholarly sources. Now, you already learned last week when you saw the videos about finding scholarly sources in the library that there's an easy way to find scholarly sources in the EBSCO database by clicking a certain limiting box. But the question that remains is, what exactly are scholarly sources? And in this video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. Now, the first thing to keep in mind for this course and for other courses is that when professors talk about scholarly sources, that word is used interchangeably with the terms peer-reviewed and academic. So you may have a history professor that talks about needing academic sources, or you may have a philosophy professor that says you have to use peer-reviewed sources. So what I want you to understand from the get-go is that scholarly, peer-reviewed academic sources is the same thing. Scholarly sources come in two types: scholarly books and scholarly journal articles. So your website is not going to be peer-reviewed, an encyclopedia article is not peer-reviewed, is not scholarly. A review article is not scholarly, and so you do need to understand that many sources that are decent sources, that are reliable, are not necessarily considered scholarly sources. Moreover, not all books or all periodical articles are considered scholarly. So you may find a book at the library and it might not be a scholarly book. You may find an article in a periodical like National Geographic and it's not a scholarly periodical article. So how do you tell the difference? We'll talk about that in a minute, but first let's talk about what it means to say a book is scholarly, peer-reviewed, or academic. Now, this is the quality control process that a scholarly source undergoes before it ever becomes published. First of all, the author of the article or book submits a manuscript to an editor. If the editor gives the manuscript preliminary approval, then copies of the manuscript are sent to a group of expert peer reviewers, usually three. These people are going to be professors, researchers, scholars that are top in their field, very knowledgeable, well-informed people with a lot of expertise in that particular area. So just like you guys do a peer review process with your essays, that peer review process takes place with published scholarly articles, except that the peer reviewers are not students, they are experts in the field. The peer reviewers fill out a review form about the manuscript and decide whether or not it is worthy of being published. The editor of the printing press or of the publishing house or of the journal is going to make the final decision about whether or not the article will go into print. Now, it's important to understand that if a journal publishes, say, 8 articles, it may get 50 or 100 or 200 submitted articles. And so it is very difficult to get published in a journal, and there's a lot of competition. Same thing with books. There are many manuscripts that are sent to publishing houses that never appear in print. That means that the ones that do actually pass this peer review process and appear in print are very high quality sources. Now, magazine articles, newspaper articles, websites, they do not go through this peer review process. Encyclopedias don't go through this peer review process, and that is why it is important to have a number of scholarly sources, because they go through more quality control than other types of sources. Now, this is the million-dollar question. How do you tell if the journal article you found is scholarly? Now, the easiest way to tell, of course, is to follow the little tricks that I showed you in that library video, where you limit your search using the checkbox, and then you check for the icon that marks whether or not you have an academic journal or not. So that's the easiest way. But there are a couple other things that you can look for. Journals usually come out about 4 times a year, maybe only once a year. They're not monthly like a magazine, and so they have a volume and issue number. So they're not going to have like a September issue, an October issue. They will be, say, volume 50 and number 3 or something like that. Scholarly journals do not have a lot of advertising, nice photographs, glossy pages. They are intended to convey information in the most economical way possible, and so there's not a lot of attention getting gloss or anything. A journal article is going to cite a lot of sources, and if you're looking at the actual physical journal itself, it will often list the peer review board inside the front cover, on the website, or in the margins of a page, possibly in the back of the journal. So you can check to see if there is an editorial board or a peer review board. If there is, then you can be assured that that source is scholarly. I do want you to be aware of a couple of things when you're looking at journal articles. Not everything in a scholarly journal is a full-length peer-reviewed article. Journals also publish book reviews, translations, introductory essays, bibliographies, all this kinds of stuff. And there's also an abstract, a little paragraph about the journal article that may be published on a website or in a database. If you've watched the video about finding library sources, and you should have, I showed you an abstract for the articles in there. Now that little paragraph, you should not quote or take information from that paragraph. Instead, you need to read the whole article. Now, abstracts, book reviews, introductory essays, all that stuff, those are not scholarly because they do not undergo this peer review process. Books can be a little bit more difficult than articles to decide whether or not they're scholarly because there's not that little handy-dandy limiter in EBSCO or in the WorldCat to show you whether or not your books are scholarly. Now, the easiest way to tell if a book is scholarly is that if it is published by a university press, then you can be assured it is a scholarly peer-reviewed source. However, there are many scholarly presses some that aren't associated with the university. You do just kind of have to become familiar with those over time. And once you recognize those publishing houses, you will be able to determine whether or not it's a peer-reviewed source or not. Now, a scholarly book in general is going to be like a scholarly journal in that it's not going to have a lot of glossy pictures, it's not going to look slick, shiny, catchy, whatever. It is going to have a lot of sources on the works cited page. Lots and lots of sources in a bibliography or works cited section. It's going to be fairly formal or serious, and the author will most likely, in 99 cases out of 100, the author will have scholarly credentials, meaning that he or she will be a professor, a researcher, an expert of some kind. Alright, so that's pretty much all you need to know about scholarly sources, and so please drop me a message if anything is not clear or if you need more information.